Geeks and geekettes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, comic book fans all over the world, welcome back to another brand spanking new edition of Ask Chuck Dixon. All new material. Uh, oh, and what is Ask Chuck Dixon? Well, it's where you get to ask me, a world famous, world renowned, stopped on the street all the time for his autograph, comic book writer, and you get to ask me about what I do for a living. And what I do for a living is I write comic books. And hey, we've hit 10,000 subscribers thanks to you. I'm going to try to hold on to 10,000 subscribers. YouTube's already peeling a few away. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Let's keep this train rolling. And if you have subscribed, check and make sure you're still subscribed, because there's some dirty work at the crossroads here going on all the time, day and night. First question, Comics 616. My question is about Mark Spector, Moon Knight 18, 1990. Let's go back in time. When they try to rescue Mark and Bosco Verde, is the fact that Frenchie drives pilots precisely a white 2CV French car. Was that in the script? If yes, do you remember what was the inspiration intention? Was it a nod to the movie or to some kind of local moonmobile? I noted Sal Valuto seems to appreciate the designs of vehicles, civilian and or professionals. Usually I just describe hot imported car, and I leave it up to the artist, whatever car they fantasize owning someday or feel like drawing, or maybe they've got a model of that car on their shelf for reference. So I never specify cars because, everybody, well, maybe not, Gen Z, but everyone else has a favorite car, and this dream car they might own someday. And mine would be Lone Wolf McQuaid's Dodge Ram, but but so I always leave the car up to the artist so they can have some fun. And man, you are right about Sal. Sal is a tremendous. I don't know. I never asked Sal about that. If he had an engineering background or whatever, but he pays a lot of attention to design. I mean, here we see the Mooncopter, the redesigned Mooncopter, because I wanted a more consistent vehicle. And some stuff to figure out, costuming, everything. Sal pays an extraordinary amount of attention to details like that. And I was relatively new breaking into the business. I'd only been writing professionally for about 5 years when I got Moon Knight, and I got hooked up with Sal, whose work I was never familiar with before, and it was a dream come true. I mean, we worked on I think 23 issues together on Moon Knight, and I couldn't have been happier. We were both having a good time, and a lot of back and forth on gear and logistics and things like that. And yeah, he's a true pro. Joshua Ignatowski, I've heard that something a writer should master is the ability to convey information about a story's plot, characters, and or setting without info dumping and making the story feel like reading a banal school textbook. What are some techniques that you found yourself and other writers use to pull this off? Well, it's I hear Don Simpson is making fun of talkie comics and info dumping, but the yeah, in the 70s, mostly comics got really, really wordy, and written by people who weren't necessarily professional writers, people who didn't seem to have a talent for conveying information visually or conveying information by word in any sort of a brief form. Brevity is the soul of wit, some guy once said. And that really annoyed me as a comic book reader, because I felt, even though I didn't know the words, I felt comics should have been more cinematographic, more visually driven than yak, yak, yak. And it seemed like a lot of these writers were getting paid by the word. What you want to do is, as a writer, especially on dialogue, and every writer has something they sweat more than something else, and I do sweat the dialogue more than anything else. That's the one thing I will go back and rewrite and play with and fool around with. And when it comes to dialogue, it's simply a matter of asking the question. Probably a lot of you can repeat this with me. The question that every writer must ask themselves all day long as they're writing: is there a better way to say this? And there always is a better way to say it, because your first instinct as a writer, it's like Jeopardy. Your first answer is usually correct. Your first instinct as a writer is to think of either a line you've heard before, or a cliche, or something hackneyed, or something too on the nose in the dialogue. And readers don't like any of that. Readers are smart, and they want new, fresh. They want something that feels like it belongs to the character only, something unique to that character, to their voice. And so I really do sweat that dialogue. I really am sitting here all day long saying, is there a better way to say this? And I think it's as simple as that. There's no trick. There's no magic. The dialogue that you choose comes from, your brain, stuff you've heard people say. I write dialogue and I'm like, wow, where did I get that turn of phrase? I don't remember actually hearing that in real life, but somehow it got stuck in my memory. And that's really it. Just, is there a better way to say this? Hey, now with 10% more Ignatowski. Joshua is back with the writing trope of info dumping apparently has a closely related trope known as intro dumping, where characters in a scene will do unnatural sounding dialogue in which they give a roll call of their names, abilities, etc. in a rather clunky way with seemingly little or no motivation to do so other than the narrative purpose of making sure the audience knows who they are. Do you know of any times this trope has appeared elsewhere in fiction? What are your thoughts on it? No, it's really, it's a comic book thing. How many times did Chris Claremont, and nothing against Chris Claremont, he was playing by the rules. How many times did Chris Claremont open an X-Men story in the Danger Room? You got to open on action, and you got the characters to refer to each other by name and display their abilities. And Chris wasn't doing this because he just loved opening stories on the Danger Room. He was doing this because there were hard and fast rules at Marvel that every character had to be named upon their first appearance, and that their powers and abilities be either shown or referenced, so we knew who they were and what they could do and what made them special. And this had to all happen at the beginning of the story. The other one, and the one I really objected to, was that the characters had to meet bad guys suited to their particular ability, so that the character would use their specific powers to defeat that bad guy. And I always thought that was, wow, that's way too constraining. So there were a lot of rules like that at Marvel, under Jim Shooter, under Mark Grunwald, under what I affectionately refer to as the circle jerk of under editors. And you had to stick to that. And it was creatively, it was like a dead end. You couldn't, if I'm going to work that hard to create meaningful or effective or engaging entertainment under these restrictions, I'm going to go off and create something of my own. I'm not working that hard for a comic book page rate. You're asking a lot of your writers. But the thing is, you could just go to formula, as Chris Claremont did. And again, I'm not slamming Chris. He's doing the best he can. He's like, look, let me get this crap out of the way in the first 3 or 4 pages so I can get to my actual story. Let me bend the knee here at the opening so I can get to my damn story and tell it, and hopefully without any interference. But yeah, it was that's the reason why that happens. Now you want to refer to your characters by name somewhere in the story, but you find a way to do that. You find it, like I said earlier, you find a different way to say it. You find a different way to reveal it. But practically, I mean, if you're picking up X-Men or Spider-Man or Batman and you don't already know who the main characters are, most of the readers do these days. I know they used to tell us, particularly at DC, write every comic as if it's a person's first comic, but you can accomplish that without a roll call, without what you call intro dumping. You can do that without that. You just come up with an engaging incident that draws the reader in and makes them more curious about the characters that are involved. And there's different ways of doing it. I always thought Robert Kanigher did it so well in the DC War stories, where he would introduce the names in a less obvious way, but of course he had the boon of every war story opens with a war scene, a battle scene, and so that kind of made it a little easier to get the characters' names out, and well, they're not their particular abilities, but their particular weapons, so that we would understand them and their motivations and everything else early on. So that's what makes war comics fun to write, because there's always action. I mean, if you reach a slow part in your story, just have a bunch of Nazis come over the hill, speed things up for a while. I mean, I particularly like. I think the best example of how to open on action and intro the characters, it's got to be the opening of Lethal Weapon 2, which opens in the middle of a car chase. And when I saw this movie, I was like, whoa, I've never seen a movie open like this. It just opens in the middle of a car chase. I mean, as the movie opens, we have a sense that we missed about 15 minutes of car chase previous. And in the dialogue and in the action, they quickly catch us up to who Riggs and Murtaugh are, what they're about, their varying personalities, and all the rest. And it's all done in a car chase. And you're not aware that you are being informed about characters and motive and personality and all the rest of it, because you're so involved in this car chase, but you're still taking that information in. And that's I always think of that opening as, well, that's the way to do it. That's what I mean. Engage the reader, viewer in action and make them curious. Hey, what's going on? This is terrific. I'm having fun. This is suspenseful and thrilling. Who are these guys? And then take it from there. Joshua's back with his third question. How long do you typically give a story, film, show, etc., a chance to get good before you put it down and move on to something else? I'm less tolerant with books. I mean, if I'm looking at a book and I've never heard of the author, I generally I'll pick it up and I'll read the first few lines. And if it doesn't open well, I'm not interested. Particularly with genre fiction. Literature may be a little different, but literature has some great openings. They were the best of times. They were the worst of times. Call me Ishmael. I mean, come on. And if a book has a prologue, I put it right down. If a book has a long list of dedications at the beginning, I put it right down. If a book has an introduction where the writer explains why he wrote what he wrote, I'm not reading it. I don't want to know about the writer. To me, the writer should be invisible. I want to hear a story. I want to read a story. And so books, yeah, I will put aside a book. I will get, in some cases I'll give, okay, this opening is crap, but I really like the concept and I've read this author before. I'm going to give it some time, and 30 pages in, just, okay, forget it. I'm not wasting my time with this. It's not going nowhere. Now, with movies, it's different. I will sit through almost anything. I can name on one hand, I can count on one hand the number of films I've started to watch and stopped. Probably more since Netflix. There's a lot of stuff on Netflix where you're like, okay, I see where this is going. And I'm gone. But very few movies that I just stopped watching and had no curiosity as to what happened next. I remember one was Shadow of the Hawk. Really bad supernatural thriller with like a Native American theme. And it was on a double bill with Stranger and the Gunfighter when I saw it at the theater. And I got about 15 minutes into Shadow of the Hawk. I thought, okay, I'm not. I got other things to do. I just walked out. And that's the only time I've ever walked out of a movie theater. But I'll give time to almost anything, any kind of slow burn epic. I watch a lot of foreign movies. Does that explain it? I mean, I watch a lot of Claude Chabrol movies, and you got to put the time in. You know, they don't seem to ever be going anywhere until the last 15 minutes. But the last 15 minutes make it all worth it. So yeah, books I'll put down. Um, Films I'll tolerate. Comics, yeah, I don't, if I don't already know it, yeah, I won't read it. I won't tolerate a comic that sucks for too many pages. My eyes just sort of glaze over. Joshua is back. Got some more tips on writing relationship stories about characters who are already married. With ones about non-married characters, there's always a central conflict of will they, won't they, that you can write stories about. But what specific central conflicts can be used for relationship stories where the two characters have already decided to stick together for better or worse? Well, I'm going to stick to comics, but in comic books, there's very few married couples that remain married. I don't even know if Ralph or Sue Dibney are still alive in the DC universe, but I remember reading them as a kid, and I thought Sue Dibney was an extraordinarily tolerant woman because Ralph was always breaking dates or rushing out in the middle of dinner, or rushing off in the middle of a theater visit to the theater to solve some crime. His nose would tingle, and you knew there was a mystery in the air. And she was pretty tolerant, so they really didn't deal with the married aspects beyond like a situation comedy level in the time. Uh, you know, um, like a Dick Van Dyke, Mary Tyler Moore kind of relationship, and so it really wasn't much there. Reed and Sue were, she was tolerant to a point. Reed, um, they made the relationship believable, but they never really fought. She would give her opinions, uh, or reservations about something that Reed was going to do, but he was the big time genius and everything else, and it was a different time period. So, and that's the thing. You don't want to. I think the natural tendency when you have married couples is that they're going to, get into fights, sometimes physical in the case of these characters, unfortunately. Unfortunately, all the way around, that they're going to fight all the time and everything else. It gets really tiresome. Um, and generally, it's men writing these comics. Sorry, ladies, but it is, vast majority of comic book writers are men. And, back in the day when they would have a married couple argue, the woman always came off worse. She came off as a nag or whatever. And who wants to read any of that? But there's ways to write this stuff that where you can talk about marriage. I mean, marriage is hard work. It's I always call having kids the hardest job you'll ever love. But marriage is tough. It takes work. It's not just two people fall in love and it's wonderful. They're two different people, and even after many many years of marriage, you're still finding out things about each other. You're still learning to get along because ideally it's a lifelong commitment, and you got to take it seriously at the beginning. All of these things are really not, comics are not the place for this kind of stuff. Generally, the married couple in a comic, be it Reed and Sue, or Peter Parker and Mary Jane, as they were for a while, it's a gimmick. It's a change up. It's like the most uh, back in the comic strip days, they would use marriage as a vehicle to change up a strip. Originally, Dagwood and Blondie were not married. They became married. In fact, the first 2 years of their strip is about their engagement. And Little Abner and Daisy May, when they got married in the comic strips, it was such big news. It made the cover of Life magazine. It was huge. And the strips went on. I mean, Blondie's, the strip changed. It became instead of Poor Little Rich Girl strip, it became, the domesticity and everything else. Little Abner's marriage changed the strip very little, except to add a frisson of danger that would, when their marriage would be put to the test by various things, by separation or time, or the many times that little Abner was thought to be dead. So, but yeah, I mean, it's different. It's a different relationship than the will they or won't they. They are together, but you can't treat it as a status quo. Like, okay, they're married now. That's it. Their relationship is now plateaued. No, no. When you get married, it's the beginning of your relationship. It is not the end. Brick hard slab. I can't be the only guy asking me what the hell is going on with Nightwing. Do they have to pay you for using him, even though the character is nothing like your real character? Are you separated enough from the character it's not so awful, or does it chap your hide? Have you ever been tempted to write your version of Batman and Robin, but better? I understand that what you did they can't take away, but it just seems awful. Yeah, I mean, I don't really follow. I mean, fans such as yourself, I hate the word fans, readers, concerned friends approach me. Oh, you see what they did with Nightwing? And they send me, pages out of context for me to read, or panels out of context. And yeah, it's all pretty nightmarish and horrifying. And I feel bad for the readers of these comics that their beloved characters are being treated so shabbily and so unprofessionally, by a whole lot of no talents who don't either like or understand the characters, don't take the time, aren't invested. They got no skin in the game. I don't get paid. I didn't create Nightwing, so I don't get a dime from anything anybody else does. But what it appears to me, what the lousy Nightwing comics do is produce a demand for the older, better ones. So Nightwing is always being collected in brand new trade paperback and hardcover editions, and I do see money from that. So I guess the end result. But I would prefer if someone talented were to take on Nightwing and write him the way he should be written. And but as far as chapping my hide, the one that really upsets me is what they've done to the Punisher. No publisher or franchise owner has ever intentionally destroyed a character the way Marvel destroyed the Punisher. Yeah, I know they're ruining all of our favorite franchises from Lord of the Rings to Star Wars, but they're just doing it because they don't know what they're doing. They're fumbling around in the dark, have no idea, have no feel for the franchises they're working on. They're just being morons. But in the case of the Punisher, it was premeditated that they wanted to ruin this character. They not only destroy him, they emasculate him, they take away his reason for being, and basically try to erase everything about the Punisher, so that now we look back on all those great stories and all those great comics and go, oh well, this was the end result, that he was a delusional psychopath, that he was just a dangerous scumbag. I mean, what is that about? Why do that? And it's pretty much empirical proof that, yeah, they hate these characters. And as I've said before, they not only hate the Punisher, they hate you for liking the Punisher. And they were going to punish you. So that one does upset me. Nightwing, no. Nightwing could always come back. You could put a talented creative team on it and bring it back to square one, in a heartbeat. But, they don't seem interested in that. They don't seem interested in you as a reader. Brock Franklin, what's your process when creating a fictional city? When describing the city for the artist or reader, do you describe it at a part at a time or give a bird's eye view? When I was tasked with creating Bloodhaven, I'm going to use that as an example. I was tasked with creating Bloodhaven, a new city for Nightwing to occupy, by Scott Peterson. And the name was built in. I wanted to call the city Drescher because I just thought it was forgettable. But they like the name Bloodhaven, so I wanted to give a reason. Why is it called Bloodhaven? It's called Bloodhaven because it was a Dutch whaling port at one point, and Bloodhaven is sort of an Anglicization of the original Dutch name. And I thought, well, I want to base it on cities that I know. So it's a little bit of Camden, New Jersey. It's a little bit of Atlantic City, New Jersey. It's a little bit of New Haven, Connecticut, which if you've never been, don't. And it's also part Manayunk, and Manayunk is a small town. I don't know if it's outside of Philadelphia or part of Philadelphia. And there's nothing wrong with Manayunk. Manayunk is not like Bloodhaven. But what I liked about Manayunk is that everything passes it. The Pennsylvania Turnpike, the Schuylkill Expressway, just goes right past Manayunk. The train lines go right past Manayunk. The Schuylkill River goes right past Manayunk. All these different things go right past Manayunk. The only way to get to Manayunk is to drive to Manayunk on surface roads. And it's also kind of a cool looking town. A small town, industrial at one point, and now sort of artsy. I don't know what it's like now. Back when I knew it in the 70s, it had sort of a hippie vibe. But anyway, I wanted all those elements. I wanted Bloodhaven to be a town that never made the right choice. When whaling went away, they decided to become the asbestos capital of the world. That kind of thing. So it's a dying, dead town. It's much like Detroit is now, depopulated. Everything passes it. There's one exit on the highway, on the turnpike for Bloodhaven. That's it, because nobody wants to get off. And I also, I wanted there to be no new buildings. Basically, Bloodhaven stopped any kind of development in the 1970s, and also the streets would be named after whaling terms and hardcore crime writers. So you might go down to the corner of Baleen and Woolrich, Hammett and Scrivener. So it was coastal, and these are all things I came up with, and then Scott McDaniel just went nuts. Scott McDaniel just so perfectly, almost to a caricature level, presented this city, this forgotten city that gets bypassed by everything. And if you remember those fantastic, like 23-point perspective down shots of Nightwing, flying over the city, well, not flying, swinging over the city, and below him is this like Gordian knot of freeways and clover leaves and everything else, throwing the city into shadow. I mean, he just did an amazing job. So that's what you want to think about. I worked on Gotham. When I added a lot of stuff to Gotham, try to figure out stuff, street names and things like that, places that Batman could visit over and over again, to provide some sort of consistency. I remember the Strip and Post, the Iceberg Lounge, the Westward Bridge. I would use street names over and over again, so it creates sort of a familiarity. I started naming sections of Gotham, suburban communities in Gotham, outside Gotham, things like that, and trying to keep it all consistent. So to the readers, it felt like a real place. So that's really what it is. It's about consistency. Now I'm currently involved in building the city of Florispark, the fictional Texas town where so much of the Rippaverse action is set. And I'm having fun. I'm having fun like I did on Nightwing and on Batman. And, creating, currency, because this is the Republic of Texas. This is an alternate universe kind of thing, where there's an independent Republic of Texas, and creating currency, creating stores, creating brands of beer, creating fast food restaurants. And I get involved with the logos, creating the logos for these places and everything else. And, Erica's like, man, go to town, go crazy, and establish the stuff. There's a fast food, like fish finger restaurant I came up with. And boy, I can't wait till you folks see it. And I'm pushing Eric. I said, we got to have t-shirts of this logo. So, anyway, I mean, it's it's just a lot of fun. So you just got to think, what cities or city do I want to model this after that I've been in, that I have my experience in? And then what's the history? What's the background? Why does this city look the way it looks? And then just let your imagination go crazy. Twin spin. Brock is back with, when writing a story set in the past, how do you show and not tell the reader when the story takes place? Subtly, I mean, you can simply have a caption on a movie. You'll see, Paris, 1790. Boom. Okay, you're there. That's all done. You can do the same thing in a comic. But generally, I mean, if you're reading a book, reading a comic, watching a movie that's set in a historical period, you kind of know going in already, unless you're going in completely cold. I mean, if you're going to see Gladiator 2, you kind of know, hey, it's a Gladiator movie. It's probably set in ancient Rome, unless you're a dimwit. And there's a lot of dimwits around. If you go to the movies and watch a historical epic, you'll see a lot of people lost, and then other people trying to explain to them what's going on. I remember going to see Master and Commander, and over and over again, as different nautical terms were done, or things were done in the film but not explained to the audience, what the hell are they doing right now? And I would see wives turn to their husbands, and the husbands whispering in their ear, what's going on? They were obviously all like nautical fiction fans that I saw opening weekend. Master and Commander. It's like, yes, yeah, clue the lines. They're cluing the lines. This is what that means. They're kedging the ship forward. That's what it means. That's what they're doing. This is how it's done. This is how that works, and that's kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, I think generally going in, and then from there you just got to keep it as authentic and historically accurate to period details, and more importantly, in my opinion, the attitude of the characters. Are the characters' attitude in period? There's nothing worse than a historical movie where people are talking like they're in line at Target when they're they're fighting ancient Assyrians. So yeah, I mean, it's easy enough. It's kind of in the marketing. I mean, if you pick up a Western, you understand it's set in the past mostly. If you pick up a novel or book or comic about armored knights, you're in the medieval period. So it's not that hard. Not that hard. Triple spin. Brock is back with, in the Richard Dragon series you did with Scott McDaniel, the character is very different than the one that appeared in the question. Do you recall the reason for these changes? Also, were the changes made with Denny O'Neil's blessing? I don't think Denny was ever asked, ever consulted. They just told me, hey, Scott McDaniel, we got Scott McDaniel and we want to do Richard Dragon. Do you want to work with Scott again? And it was like immediate yes. And I was told it's kind of reboot the character. So I just, I wrote, 12 issues of a martial arts epic. Brought back a lot of the Richard Dragon antagonists, Bronze Tiger, guys like that. Lady Shiva, of course. But the biggest problem, and I know this has nothing to do with your question, but the biggest problem I think the series had is that we had not reintroduced Richard Dragon to the DC universe. And most comic readers at the time didn't know who the hell he was or care. So the book failed after a year in publication because, this guy trained Batman. I always thought, and I said at the time, you're going to do an arc in Batman or Detective or one of the other things, reintroducing this character, right? As one of Bruce Wayne's mentors. And you're like, no, we have no plans for that. I said, well, then what's the point of doing this? You're presenting to what most readers would appear to be a brand new character, but you're not letting us know his history. You're not letting us know this guy's an integral part of the Batman mythos, and you're not bringing that out. But by that time, DC had stopped becoming a publishing business. It was now acting like some sort of a nonprofit. So my pleas fell on deaf ears. I think we could have gone 2 years with the book if our opening sales had been stronger, and they would have been stronger if readers understood who this character was and knew to anticipate this new series rather than going, who's this guy? Ian Potash. This is an extremely petty nitpick from me. Oh, we love them. But did it ever bug you that DC Comics just stands for Detective Comics? I know the original name of National Comics Publications. It was also National Periodical, and I think one other name. They didn't roll off the tongue. But I also feel like naming the company after the Detectives comic line never really did justice to the full scope of their library. I mean, it is what it is when you're naming a company. Somebody just says, hey, we're going to call it this. And then after a couple of weeks, it sounds like you were always calling it that. Look at the way companies are named. Detective Comics, it was our first successful comic book. So that's what we're going to call the company. I mean, if they had published Action Comics first, I guess it would be AC Comics. But there you go. And the thing is, when what we now know as DC Comics was created, it was actually like 3 different entities. It was National Periodical, and then something else, and something else. And it was like 3 companies within the company, and then they eventually joined under this single banner. And it's DC Comics. It's like Morris Garages. The MG is named for the first garage that the MG car was built in. And look at we named it Google. What's Google? Yahoo. What the hell? Coca-Cola. There's no cocaine in Coca-Cola anymore, but we still call it Coca-Cola. So, and it'll always be Coca-Cola. Kleenex. Why Kleenex? Where'd they come up with that name? Who knows? It's clean. It's X. So in the naming of things, you just sort of name it, and it becomes the brand, and people get used to calling it that, and that's the end. So it's DC Comics. John Morgan Batneal, he reaches out on Yahoo and says, "Oye, compadre, I would like to hear you speak on comedy westerns. What are your thoughts on support your local sheriff, support your local gunfighter, Evil Roy Slade, Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, and such like? I'd be much obliged." I love a good comedy western, and I remember when Support Your Local Sheriff came out, and it was a huge hit. Everybody was talking about that movie. It was re-released in the summer. It's James Garner. He's playing a drifter. He's on his way to Australia. He comes into this town, or at least he says he's on his way to Australia. That's what I told people when I was graduating high school, because I wasn't going to college. People go, "What are you going to do after high school?" I said, "I'm going to Australia." No intention of going to Australia, but it was better than saying, "I have no idea." Anyway, James Garner, on his way to Australia, he gets involved with Joan Hackett, who's sort of a screwball dame, lives in town. I think she's the daughter of the mayor. Got a lot of great character actors. Walter Brennan and Bruce Dern are hysterical in this movie. Harry Morgan, guys like that. Jack Elam, always funny. And the story behind this movie was it was produced by Garner's own company. He put his own money up, Cherokee Productions, and they produced this movie. And I think it was Universal. They threw it out there, and it played a couple of weeks, and they pulled it. And Garner was enraged. He said, "You didn't even try to get this movie to find an audience. I think this is a hit, but you buried it." And he insisted they re-release it, and they re-released it during the summer, and it became an enormous hit. I mean, look, I seriously, everybody was talking about this movie and repeating scenes from it, and repeating lines from it that whole summer. Garner follows up with Support Your Local Gunfighter, which didn't do anywhere near as well, but I really like this movie. I've got a lot of affection for it. Garner's playing an entirely different character. He's a con artist, basically womanizing con artist who moves from one vulnerable female to the next, bilking them out of money. And he arrives in this town where there's a dispute over mining. And he's once again teamed with Jack Elam, playing, again, a completely different character as his sidekick. And Elam steals every scene he's in. There's a terrific scene where Garner is lying to someone, and Elam is standing next to him and knows everything he says is a lie. And Elam's facial reactions to the outrageous tall tales Garner is telling so coolly is hysterical. It's also the rare film where they build up a character that you haven't seen. They keep talking about this nasty character called, I think, Curly Bill or something like that. This nasty character that everybody's afraid of and everybody fears is going to come to town. And when I was watching the movie the first time, I thought, please let Curly Bill turn out to be somebody great, somebody really cool. Please don't let it just be some nothing actor. If you're building this guy up, he's got to be somebody terrific. I won't spoil it for you who it is, because you're going to want to go. You're going to want to see it. It would ruin it to tell you who Curly Joe or Curly Bill or whoever he was turns out to be. But it was a fun movie. It's a shame it didn't reach the success of Support Your Local Gunfighter, because it probably would have been the beginning of a franchise for Garner. Evil Roy Slade, which you mentioned, Morgie, was a TV movie with John Astin, and also featured a whole bunch of great comic actors, Mickey Rooney, and in particular Dick Shawn, satirizing Paladin from Have Gun Will Travel. And it's a comedy Western, and it is very funny. It's a funny TV movie. John Astin completely embodies his role as a sort of evil Pecos Bill. He falls out of a wagon at the beginning of the movie as an infant, and just sort of makes his own way in the West. and he is evil. He's a nasty, horrible guy. My favorite line in this was when they run into a bunch of midget lawmen who the law have hidden in the strong boxes of a stagecoach in order to ambush Evil Roy Slade. And Evil Roy Slade's advice to his gang is aim for their little hearts. It's a funny movie, and kind of set the stage for this one, Blazing Saddles. Blazing Saddles is one of those movies. It's not just a movie; it's an inflection point. It's one of the great comedy westerns, and total satires, total deconstruction, complete decimation of the Western genre in the hands of Mel Brooks. But largely it's a commentary or a satirization or poking fun at racism. And I say it's an inflection point because it really did, you had audiences of people who for this should have been an awkward moment. You had mixed audiences. I saw it with a mixed urban audience when I saw it. And it was too funny not to laugh at. No one got outraged. No one got triggered. No one got angry at each other. No one was pointing fingers at each other. We were all just laughing. And in the end, when you laugh at Blazing Saddles, you're laughing at yourself. And I really think this awakened the United States to the fact that, hey, we're not as divided as they like us to think we are. We all think this is funny. Yeah, it's offensive. Yeah, it's in your face. But that's why it's so damn funny. And it's offensive to different people for different reasons. And it's just a marvelous thing to have a comedy Western with that kind of impact. I'm sure Mel Brooks never intended it. He just wanted to make you laugh by making you feel squirmy in your seat. Okay, we come to the last two here, which are my favorites. Cat Ballou was a comedy Western made in the mid-'60s, back when America didn't really have an opinion about Jane Fonda. They thought she was okay. That opinion would change. But it's a funny Western parody with all of the tropes of a Western and stakes. There's real stakes. There's a real plot line. It's the usual independent ranchers versus basically a cartel, the Cattlemen's Association kind of Western. And Jane Fonda as Cat Ballou turns outlaw with her little band, Michael Callan and Dwayne Hickman, and most notably Lee Marvin in his Academy Award-winning role as the drunken kid Shalene. And he plays a dual role. He's both the good guy and the bad guy in this movie. He plays twin brothers. And Lee Marvin would, as I said, go on to win an Academy Award and really boost his career. Everybody knew who Lee Marvin was up to this point, but he was just a guy who showed up every once in a while in, Gunsmoke or The Virginian. But now, kaboom, he was a big major star, and many, many great things lay ahead for him. But one of the things about this movie that works, that usually never works in a movie for me, are the musical interludes. Nat King Cole and Stubby K, whatever genius put these two together, deserved a bonus. Who thought this team would work? And they are the narrators, and they have these musical interludes where they sing these songs that inform you of passage of time or elements in the story or add resonance to what you've already seen. And they work because they're simple. It's two guys strumming banjos. The songs are funny and effective, and their performances, I mean, who doesn't love Nat King Cole? I mean, the performances are fantastic. I mean, it's one of those rare movies where I look forward to the musical interludes because they don't interrupt the story. They enhance and add resonance to what's already going on. And it's a major, major highlight of the film. And my ultimate favorite comedy Western of all time. I watch this once a year, sometimes twice. I think I'm going to watch this as soon as this is over. I love this movie. Destry Rides Again is a Universal, basically a programmer, made in 1939, Marlene Dietrich and rising star Jimmy Stewart. And what it's about is this town is having a hard time. The criminals are running the place. They make the town drunk, the sheriff, but the joke's on them because the town drunk sobers up and sends for Tom Destry, the son of one of the greatest gunfighters, greatest lawmen of the West. And Tom Destry's going to show up and straighten this town out. Well, Jimmy Stewart shows up and he's Tom Destry and he's nothing as advertised. He doesn't seem to be a real tough guy. Doesn't seem to be anxious to fight anybody. And largely just seems to want to get along with everybody in town and has no intention of bringing down big gang boss Brian Dunleavy. But of course, the joke's on us as an audience because he really is a tough son of a bitch. He's just got a slow way of getting around to it. He's got the Jimmy Stewart sort of wah way of getting around to what his aims are. He's a bit of a chess player. He's a bit of a mastermind. And that's where the comedy arises. Film also stars Marlene Dietrich in one of her best performances. Marlene Dietrich always comes off sort of cold and distant in films, very Teutonic, very Germanic. But in this movie, she really opens up because of a fantastic comedic performance. He's incredibly relatable. And of course, she and Jimmy Stewart in the movie become somewhat of a love interest. And there's a lot of heat there. There's a lot of heat between these two. And because there was some heat off screen as well. But she really brings it. And again, there's these great musical interludes with Marlene Dietrich as a saloon singer, giving her peculiar Marlene Dietrich type performances. But the songs are great, and they somewhat carry the story. Little Joe, see what the boys in the back room will have. And the songs are memorable and great, and really add to the proceedings instead of being cringeworthy and interrupting the story, as so often happens when the saloon singer shows up in a Western. I should say Madeline Kahn as a saloon singer in Blazing Saddles is also a standout, doing a Marlene Dietrich impersonation inspired by Marlene Dietrich as Frenchie in this film. They did a fantastic song, I'm Tired, with just loaded with double entendres. But it's such a fun story. This movie is such a fun story. It moves so briskly. It's got this great ensemble cast of actors. There's a terrific saloon fight between Una Merkel and Marlene Dietrich. It's a girl-on-girl screen fight that ends with one of Jimmy Stewart's funniest line deliveries ever, and just certainly worth seeing. And for me, worth seeing over and over and over again. This is a seamless Hollywood entertainment made in 1939, Hollywood's golden year, when even the programmer movies were fantastic. Hey, if you want to contact me and ask me questions, make suggestions, whatever, just reach out. brunobookstore@gmail.com. brunobookstore@gmail.com. And that'll be it for me this week. I want to thank you for listening, watching, subscribing, liking, all that stuff. And I'll see all of you, I hope, down the road.